first time that I came here is when I hear that there is this place where we concentrate all the vehicles. And I parked my car just outside. And as I parked my car outside, and I looked into this facility, I saw this one apocalyptic site. I saw a group of about 30 Israeli reservist soldiers, like me, but they were also wearing those blue aprons. And they were wearing those blue aprons, and I saw them doing all those movements. They were like brushing, and they were dealing with those vehicles that all the lady here, and they were brushing and grooming. And I was like, what is it that they're doing? I couldn't figure out what they're doing to the vehicles. And then I saw that a couple of the guys had those big vacuum cleaners, industrial vacuum cleaners, and they were vacuuming the inside of those vehicles. And then I realized what it is that they were doing. They were vacuuming all the human ashes from the inside of the vehicles. I thought it was an apocalyptic site. It was, shivering. As soon as I understood that, it took me about a good 5 minutes to decide that I'm going to leave my car and walk in. Because I knew I'm not going to leave the same person as I walked in. And by vacuuming the human ashes, we are collecting the human ashes and we bring it to burial. And every day, for more than 3.5 weeks, every day we took out between 12 and 14 big bags of human ashes to burial. But it wasn't just to get the ashes, because in some of the cases, and I'm sorry if I'm being too graphic, in some of the cases we found more than just ashes. We found actually some parts that allowed us to identify our missing people. You probably remember, but just shortly after October 7th, we had so many missing people that we didn't know whether they were kidnapped or whether they were killed. They were just missing. We didn't know what happened. Social media. And I go back to Shani Gabay because the second footage that we saw, iconic, was the footage of, it was just a frame of Shani. She was at Nova, she was at the festival, and she was shot in her leg. She had a bullet in her leg. And you could see on her face that she was so terrified. You could literally see on her face, one photo, and you understood that she's in the middle of a chaos. And then we started to investigate because Shani went missing. She was gone, and we didn't know where she was. And testimonials show that she managed to escape Nova and to get all the way to one of the shelters next to Alumim, which is 2 kilometers away. But then, apparently, Alumim was attacked, this shelter was attacked. People were killed there. She managed to escape that shelter as well, and she had nowhere to go, so she went back to Nova. And then she went missing, and she was missing for 47 days. I mean, we didn't know what happened with her until we found a necklace right where this ambulance was. And that necklace came back with Shani's DNA on it. But it didn't only carry Shani's DNA, it had another DNA of a girl named Lynn Daphne. And Lynn, she was already identified in this ambulance. She was already buried, and she was identified in this ambulance. She was already buried. So in order to look for any hints, what did we do? We went into the other girl's grave, Lynn Daphne's grave, and we wanted to open the grave in order to look for any hints of Shani. And we did. And once we opened the grave, we realized that the two were actually buried as one. As I told you, the first time I came here, I was like, I look on this apocalyptic site and I say to myself, okay, the world has to see this place. This is like the Yad Vashem of October 7th. And I have to make sure whatever is, depends on me that more and more people will hear about this place. So we started, me as a spokesman, I started to bring media here and share with them. I started to come here every day. I was like obsessed with this place. It wasn't my role, but I make it my role to come here and we start to document every vehicle that came. What's the story of the vehicle? Who was inside? Who was the family? Where we found it? Were there any survivors? Who they were? And you remember Nova? We just came from there this morning. That ambulance was in Nova. It was in Nova just as part of the protocol, just in case, because when you have an event for 4,000 to 5,000 people, you have to have an ambulance on site just in case. And that was one of the couple of ambulances that were there. And I mentioned in the morning there were 150 terrorists raided Nova. As you saw, there is nothing but woods, there is nowhere to run, even less where to hide. And some of the people that ran from Nova ran towards Gaza, they didn't know where they were going. And some of the people who ran spotted this ambulance and they thought that being in an ambulance is going to be a safe thing for them because it's an ambulance. Ambulance is meant to save lives, right? Not when you're facing Hamas terrorists. It doesn't, because we had people here that gathered in this ambulance and around it. And what do those Palestinian terrorists did when they saw the innocent people obviously carried no weapon, just people who went to celebrate peace and love? What did they do? They sprayed them with AK-47. You can actually see all the bullet shots. But that wasn't enough because they followed it with hand grenades. Multiple hand grenades into this ambulance. And just to put the cherry on top, they launched an RPG. RPG straight to that front wheel. So when we found this ambulance in Nova, it was actually on its side. But you see on the back part, it was on its side. And it was burning for just about 11 hours. Because in ambulance there's some oxygen pipes. And this ambulance burned for 11 hours. 18. We found the remains of 18 people. It took us time. We didn't find all the remains in one time. At the beginning we identified 11, and then 12, and then 14, and then 16, and then 17, and then 18. We kept identifying more people in this ambulance. But 18 people lost their lives in one ambulance. Ben really was a saint, and I'll share Ben's story for two reasons. On October 7th, Ben was in Nova, and he was from Beersheba. I don't know if you know where Beersheba is, but it's a city in the south. And Ben used to live in Gush Katif. When we were in Gaza, remember when I said we pulled out? Gush Katif was the biggest community inside of Gaza Strip, one of the ones that we pulled out from, and we gave them to the Palestinians, build the state, but instead they built a terror state. So as soon as Ben heard on October 7th, as soon as he heard the AK-47s, he said to everybody, there are terrorists coming. And they said, how do you know it's not the IDF? He said, because I hear AK-47 and I hear them shooting automatically. In the IDF we don't shoot automatically, we shoot in singles. So that was his sign that these are terrorists. So what did he do? He tell everybody to escape, and just by doing that, he managed to save lots of lives. We knew that they have the desire. We knew that they are building capabilities in executing such action, but we failed to identify that they have the intent of executing the mission, because based on our intelligence, we know we can pick up on things that are alerting us to know that they are planning on executing such a thing. And this time we failed. We failed terribly, and we paid the full price. You can actually see this black vehicle. There's a group of bullets to the driver. This was actually the first vehicle that I spotted when I came here. First time that I'm here, I see this vehicle, and I spotted it because in the back there was a baby seat. And being a father of two infants, automatically you see a baby seat and it's soaked in blood. You start to think about the worst thing that you can possibly imagine. So 1 year after, I came here with a reporter from Germany, and I showed him this vehicle, and I talk about it like I'm talking with you guys. And all of a sudden, there is a guy who stands right where I'm standing, and he then turns to me, and he says, he hear me talking about the vehicle, and he goes like, "That's my vehicle." And I go like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, that's my vehicle. It was exactly the way you described it. The terrorist shot us, but then he inserted his AK-47 to the vehicle and he sprayed everybody." And I'm looking at him like, is he legit? Is he telling the truth? Or, I mean, and he starts shivering as he speaks. And I see that behind his shoulder, there's a group of people standing there. All of them are crying and tearing. And I just hugged him for me. I asked him who survived. He said me. And then I asked him who died. And he said three of my family members. Two of his brother-in-laws, Noy Maudi and Motil Kabetz, and the nephew of his wife, Matan Rosenberg. All of them were killed. They went to the Nova Festival and they managed to escape with the vehicle, but they were ambushed in one of the junctions, close to one of the junctions. They were ambushed. So for me, it was a personal closure. Just after 1 year to finally meet the story of this vehicle, to understand that there is a survivor from that incident. But I can tell you that we are still, just like today, people coming, we're still learning stories of victims and from heroes. Even 2.5 years later, we're still gathering stories of heroes and victims.